sure did learn a lot this week about then Vice President Joe Biden, his family, and connections to really friendly countries like Russia and Kazakhstan, China, of course, Ukraine. No corruption in those nations, right? There was a time when the American media, not too long ago, was really interested in whether a president had direct financial connections to Russia and other countries back there in the Eastern Europe bloc. Now they don't seem so interested. What's that all about? Let's bring our friend Stephen Miller into it. He's a media and now analyst there and the host of Versus Media podcast. He writes at The Spectator. Well, you watch the media a lot, Stephen. Why aren't they interested anymore?
Yeah, it's fun. If you recall that Time Magazine Onion Dome taking over the White House Tetris Lego style, and here you have almost more direct connections and at least proof of that than we ever had with the previous president and all those accusations of Russia. It's a cliche, and I don't like to say it, but it's almost as if like Biden and his family and with the media are like everything that they accuse the Trump family of being. And, I like to use the example if, all you have to do is kind of switch the parties here, pretend that Hunter Biden is Don Jr., pretend that Joe Biden is Donald Trump, pretend that, the Biden family, Naomi Biden is Ivanka. How would the media be covering exactly what we're seeing coming out of, what we saw with the laptop and then this financial disclosures and these
Right.
payments being made? Nobody in our media would believe that, well, you can't directly prove that Donald Trump got a payment from Russia. Nobody would believe that. And that's not even a hypothetical. We lived through that for 4.5 years.
Right. I was going to say you just said imagine, but we don't have to imagine. We saw it
No,
play
no.
out. I mean, Donald Trump Jr. did take a 20-minute meeting with Russians. All they talked about was facilitating adoption of Russian babies, but that was the crime of the century. Here we've got Hunter Biden. How many meetings did he take? 20 of them that involved his father directly, and it's crickets. Literally, Media Research Center has shown that they're literally ignoring the story, the rest of the media.
Yeah, I mean, we went from vague insinuations in a Hillary Clinton Oppo dossier to our media simply saying, "Well, we don't have any proof that Joe Biden directly took a check. Like, we don't
Right.
have him on tape diving into a room full of gold bullion like Scrooge McDuck. So there's nothing we can do here." That's exactly what the standard was. They lowered the standard to anonymous sources, vague insinuations, and now when it comes to one of their own and a president that they all support, it's, well, we didn't directly see a payment made to him, so I don't know. There's nothing we can do here. And I think everybody sees this for what it is.
I think you're right, and I don't think it's sustainable either. I think pretty soon this is going to move because they are in the they are in a business here, aren't they? I mean, is this they can't be taken seriously at this point, or are they just so brazen they don't care?
I think that their attitude is, if I'm being perfectly honest, I think this goes
Yeah,
beyond bias. I think that their attitude is that our election is going to come down to, once again, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump is a imminent, unique threat to the Constitution of the United States. So we must do everything in our power, and that includes ignoring corruption stories about Joe Biden. We must do everything in our power to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't sniff the Oval Office,
yeah.
even though we're going to do everything in our power to make him the nominee.
Yeah, in fact, I think you're right. We've got video evidence of it this morning. Donnie Deutsch, MSNBC, Morning Joe. This is laughable and unhinged, but it plays into exactly what you're saying about what they want this election to be about. Here, let's roll the tape.
Yeah.
Do you not understand that if Donald Trump wins, nothing else matters because it's over? Morning Joe might act, just to take a little example, Morning Joe might not exist anymore because Donald Trump has said, as all autocrats say, what they will do. And he has said, if I'm elected, I want the FCC reporting directly into me. And he will cancel the show. I mean, you need to think that, excuse me, that extreme. It's over. Freedom is over if Donald Trump gets elected. It's that simple. No other issue matters. Every other issue sprinkles down from that. However you feel about the economy, however you feel about whatever issue you're dealing with, we turn into an autocracy. What our forefathers fought for 250 years ago is over. That's what's at stake at this election. Everything else is a subtext to that.
Yeah, couple of things, and thank you to Newsbusters for pulling that.
Stop making me want to
Listen,
vote for Trump.
wait, what was that?
Stop trying to make me vote for Trump. That's what I would say. That, oh, you're telling me Morning Joe would get off the air if we voted Trump? Okay. I've never supported
That
Trump,
should
but
be Trump's
I would
campaign
vote for him on
slogan.
that. I mean,
Vote for me and I'll fire Joe
him,
Scarborough. I
right?
love
Yeah.
But listen, I'm not smart enough to be on the highly intellectual roundtable there on Morning Joe. But isn't it hilarious that neither Donnie Deutsch nor the hosts of that show or anyone at that panel are smart enough to recognize that cable news doesn't fall into the auspices of the FCC? So
Yeah. And
even if you followed this fever dream along and the FCC had to report directly to President Trump, the FCC has no control over cable news.
yeah.
It's
Somehow
completely
I don't think. Yeah. Somehow I don't think that's up Al Sharpton's alley of expertise there.
yeah, I think you're right. The other part of this, though, and I think they're really giving away the game, freedom is on the ballot. Authoritarianism is on the ballot. But here's what's not on the ballot: the economy, the war,
Right.
the price of gas. No, don't be looking at any of those things.
Yeah, I mean that's what they're all in on, and like I said, I think that's why our media is just kind of like we're going to ignore all of the corruption stuff. I mean, they can spin that any way that they want, but right now we have a sitting president who is bringing multitudes of indictments against his leading political opponent, and
Yes.
any way that you look at that, whether Trump deserves it or not. You can't tell us that we have to preserve democracy. We must preserve our democracy when you have a sitting president who, in our nation's history, has never been done, is bringing federal criminal indictments against his political opponent that is leading in the polls. And so, anything else that they can say, that doesn't look good. So, I'm sorry, you don't preserve democracy that way.
Meanwhile, let's switch the channel to CNN and see what's happening over there. John King had a little roundtable with voters.
You know how like doing that.
No, let's see what this had to do when they brought up the war in Ukraine.
If you think the United States should be supporting Ukraine in the fight against Putin, raise your hand. Nobody.
He seemed really disappointed, almost sad.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, his speech after that. He said, meeting with those voters is a lot like watching a Tucker Carlson show. And he said, they exist in a reality where that breaks our fact checkers and they think that we're part of the problem. And I guess I would take that a step further and say you are part of the problem. I would say you're the entire problem for reasons that you and I just discussed.
Yeah.
And CNN has this thing of, he acts like he's venturing out into the wilds and sitting with like a native tribe where he doesn't understand their language and he's kind of just like poking at them. And that's like all to do with this. CNN is the network that sends Donnie O'Sullivan out to political rallies with a giant boom mic and puts it in their faces and treats them like they're, unhinged, unwashed masses.
Exactly.
And so of course voters are just going to kind of sit there and say, who the hell do you think you are? No, we don't support this issue XYZ, regardless of what you think of the Ukraine war or if Russia has to be defeated. All of this ties again into Joe Biden, and I'm not a conspiracy tinfoil hat guy, but it is interesting that we have $20 million worth of payments going directly to the Biden family from two countries that are suddenly at war with each other the second he walks into the Oval Office, and that's one of those kooky facts that just can't be ignored, whether there's anything to it or not.
Yeah, Stephen Miller, Spectator, thanks for joining us. That's a great observation, and thank you for being with us. Another great observation there. John King's really upset that you're doing what Tucker Carlson says you should do instead of doing what he says you should do. How about you do what you think you should do? More to come on O'Connor Tonight.